A useful way of working on technique, pretty much any technique actually, is to analyse the movement, to look for common components or repeated patterns or something, to work on those in isolation and then to reintegrate. So, for example, if you are working on scalar type passages, if you have a look at what's going on here, what I'm doing here is basically playing 3 notes on a string and then moving. So it stands to reason, if I can get better at this 3 notes a move kind of pattern, then I'm going to get better at playing scales and scalar runs. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can do this. There's for example, in previous videos I use a technique where I'll play 3 notes and then shift to some new position, some random position, which is quite a fun way of doing it, and it allows you to start to improvise and play around with different sounds and different ideas. The other approach that you can take is to be more systematic about this and follow fixed patterns as you're moving across the strings. And the nice thing about that is that if you're trying to improvise, you tend to, well, firstly, you tend to follow the same kinds of cliches that you normally play. Or you try and break out of that and then you start to second guess yourself and you get hesitant as you move around the neck. Whereas if you're following a consistent pattern, it forces you to drill that exercise completely across the neck, and if you're careful about how you structure the pattern, you drill all of the areas of the neck equally, and so you get benefit everywhere equally as well. So what I tend to do is I tend to think of these patterns in terms of strings, the sort of string crossing patterns, because I don't just use them for one set of patterns, one set of notes. I don't just use them for descending notes or ascending notes. I'll use it for anything where I'm playing a little motif, a little 4 or 8 note motif, and I want to figure out how I can move that around elsewhere on the neck. I'll use one of these patterns. And so I'll go through 3 of the most common ones that I do. And I'll write them down in the description field as well. So they'll appear as a list of numbers basically, and the numbers correspond to the strings that I'm going to play. So let's start with the first one. The first one is based on a triplet pattern. Let's have a go at that. So with all of these patterns, really all I'm remembering is a string number that I'm switching between. And in this first one, it's quite a long one, but it's actually really quite straightforward to memorize, and it's relatively easy to play. There are no big jumps or anything moving on. So all I'm doing really is descending and ascending in groups of 3. So I start. So if I just number the strings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as usual. So I start on the first string. I just play my 3 note pattern there. Second string 2, 3, 2, 3, 4. 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6, and that gets me all the way across the neck. And then coming back, I go 5, 4, 5, then 4, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 2, 1, 2, and then I start the whole pattern again. So. And similarly, I could go in the other direction, do an ascending 3 notes instead. And on it goes. Okay, so that was nice and easy. The nice thing about that as well is because you're just moving to adjacent strings, it's quite an easy pattern to get under your fingers. It's quite a nice little pattern for warm-ups as well. If you know, before I play a gig, I may run up and down the neck like that, just getting my fingers moving. So that's a useful little introductory pattern. The next one is a little bit more tricky because I'm focusing on string skips in the next one. Let me go through that. So as I say, a little bit more complicated this time because it involves some string skipping, but just playing through slowly with a descending 3-note pattern. I start on 1, then a skip to 3, 2, 4, 3, 5, 4, 6, 4, 5, 3, 4, 2, 3, 1, and I'm back at the start again. And just like before, I can use any 3-note pattern, so doing exactly the same thing with ascending, for example. So as you see, that is a little bit more tricky than the first one because you do use some bigger string skips. With the third one is a bit uses more extended lines, so you're crossing more strings in groups. And also when you're going back the other way, you're making much bigger string jumps as well, so that's where it really starts to stretch you as well. But let's have a go at that one. So with this pattern then, what I'm trying to do is to create an extended scale run. So what I'm doing is I'm playing 4 strings in a row, and then resetting. So that was 2 to 5 and now 3 to 6. And that takes me all the way across the neck. So coming back the other way, what I do is actually reset all the way back to 2. And then reset all the way back to 1. And I'm back at the start again. And this is one of those patterns where actually when I turn it around I start from the bass, so I'll go. But otherwise it's the same pattern. So that's it, 3 sets of patterns. There's nothing particularly special about them, there's nothing to stop you coming up with your own as well. They're just the ones that I find myself using more than anything else because there are reasons behind how I've grouped the notes there. But as I say, play around with them, see what you can come up with as well. And we'll chat next time. Goodbye.